Question number 6, Dr Kennedy Graham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A question to the Minister for Climate Change Issues. Does she agree with the UN Secretary-General that we need to bring the Paris Climate Agreement into force this year? Does she seek to ratify the agreement before the UN ratification event in September?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, it is great that more than 170 countries have signed the Paris Agreement, and it certainly has a lot of momentum. It will come into force when at least 55 countries that make up at least 55% of emissions have ratified it. That may happen this year, but it's not essential that it does. The government is yet to make a decision on when New Zealand will ratify the agreement.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy Graham.
When the Defence Minister said last weekend that he's not sure if, quote, in a blanket sort of way, we're having more weather events than we have in the past, end quote, does that give her confidence she'll convince Cabinet to ratify in 2016?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, Minister Brownlee's a very deep thinker, and he thinks a lot about weather. But I don't think even he would claim that he's an expert in these matters.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy Graham.
Given that Paris signatories are invited to resubmit their climate targets at the time of ratification, and given our target has been described as, quote, grossly inadequate, will the Minister increase our target this year rather than wait for the 2023 global review, which is 7 years away?
Speaker,
the Honourable Simon
on
Bridges.
behalf of the Minister, well, the member should stop quoting himself. The truth is that we're working through these issues and we're yet to make a decision on ratification.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy Graham.
Can the Minister tell the House by what percentage our emissions are estimated to reduce between now and the target year of 2030 as a result of the domestic action on climate change she rather loosely described at Select Committee yesterday with 4 bullet points?
The Honourable Simon
Well,
Bridges.
Mr Speaker, it's 30% on 2005 levels.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Dr Kennedy Graham.
That's a target. The question was about what percentage they would reduce as a result of policy.
Well, I think the answer is given, but listen, I'll invite the member to ask a question again, but if that's the answer that's given by the Minister, that'll be the answer. The Honourable Dr Kennedy Graham, repeat the question.
Can the Minister tell the House by what percentage our emissions are estimated to reduce, not the target, estimated to reduce between now and the target year of 2030 as a result of the domestic action on climate change she loosely described at Select Committee yesterday?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, we intend to meet our target. In terms of the precise question, I don't have a percentage off the top of my head, but as I say, we intend to meet the target that we've set.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy Graham.
Can the Minister give the House a ballpark figure for how much emissions are forecast to reduce by 2030 as a result of the government's new electric vehicle policy?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Well, on behalf of the Minister, no. What we're seeking to do is effect change and a structural change across the fleet by setting targets, by looking at procurement, by having a series of funds that will encourage and accelerate electric vehicles. Good things take time, and I think this policy will, but I think it's certainly a more ambitious policy than we've seen from any other party in this parliament.
Point of order.
Point of order, Dr Kennedy Graham.
I seek leave to table the analysis provided for my office from the Minister of Transport showing that electric vehicles would reduce transport emissions by only 2.8% by 2030.
No, I've previously ruled that if the document is an analysis prepared by the member's own office, it doesn't reach a standard of authentication where I will be putting the leave.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy Graham.
Does the Minister think that New Zealanders might be a bit concerned that their Climate Minister doesn't even know how far she is falling short of meeting the climate agreement that she's about to ratify?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaking on behalf of the Minister, I think what the member is failing to appreciate is we have a considered process to go through here. We went to Paris, we have signed the declaration, the Minister did that in New York, and now we're embarking on a process assessing the pros and cons for early ratification. And that's where we are. I appreciate the members' impatience, but a good process on this important matter is important.
Point of order, right.
The Minister's being asked as to whether or not something is known or not known. Thus far, he hasn't addressed the question at all.
No, the question was hardly that specific. Does he think New Zealanders might be a bit concerned? That gives a very wide chance for the Minister to address the question on this occasion. He has.
Who does that remind you of?
Question number 7.